Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to briefly just talk to you about what we did today, why we did it, and what we might do in the future with that information and why it's so useful. You can say I was a physio before doing medicine, so I just couldn't resist the opportunity to measure everyone's walking speed here today. Next conference, it'll be sort of a push-up competition maybe, or we'll do something along those lines. The reason I wanted to measure it is there aren't very good reference ranges for what's a typical walking speed for somebody in Scotland of a certain age group. We tend to break up walking speed by age category and often sex or height because that affects how fast we walk. So today was just an idea of gathering some of these measurements today so we can then tell in the future if, compared to others of your age and sex, that if you're a slow walker or a fast walker and why that might be important. And the reason that might be important is shown in the next slide. So it's about a concept that I'm studying my PhD on, and it's called motoric cognitive risk. So I'm just going to go on and introduce that to you now. So motoric cognitive risk, as the name suggests, combines a motor sign, so walking speed, and a cognitive symptom, so any cognition problem. It's a high-risk state for going on to develop dementia, and the reason it's important to look at high-risk states, well, there's lots of different reasons, and some aren't even on the slide. Some of the most important ones are that participants are people with dementia and carers of people with dementia think it's important to identify if they're at high risk of going on to develop dementia. It adds value to their lives. It helps plan. It can also help people address modifiable risk factors such as lifestyle factors, and it can help with planning for future care and as well as recruiting to research trials. So this is all motoric cognitive risk syndrome is. It's really simply if you have a slow gait speed, and that is slow compared to something, and that's what we were doing today, and if you have a self-reported or subjective cognitive complaint. So that's, I'll talk about that as long as you don't have dementia already or significant functional impairment. So this is sort of where we envisage it. That's the area. So it's preclinical, it's before even MCI, which is mild cognitive impairment. And some of the research has shown that if you look at people who go on to develop dementia and check what was their speed like 10 years before they had any symptoms or signs showing, often they're walking slower. So this is where we kind of envisage it. I should say this is just a graph. Not everyone with this by any means goes on to have MCI and then dementia, not at all. But it's just to kind of envisage where it is. So it's really clinically relevant because it's really easy to measure. We basically did the longest part with everyone today, and after you signed the consent form, it took about 15 seconds to measure your walking speed. And all I then ask in clinic is, have you noticed any problems with your memory? Any changes to your memory? Has anyone else commented on that? Or trouble concentrating, anything like that. And if you have the two of these and you're compared to your peers slower, well then you're going to have MCR. And the reason it's important is so there's more research coming out that you're at about 3 or 4 times the risk of developing dementia within about 6 or 7 years if you have MCR and you're in your 70s. Equally, you're more risky for falling in future, and your sort of 5-year mortality is higher. So there's lots of evidence coming out about the prognostic value or the sort of predictive validity of MCR as a tool. But basically, it's something really quick and easy to measure, and it adds a lot of value. So it's not affected by your education level or your language skills like a lot of the cognitive tests, like the mini mental state exam or the ACE3 exam. It's a good adjunct to these. It shouldn't be replacing anything, but it's something that can be helpful if there's language barriers, or if someone's got different education than the average. It's really suitable in both high and low income countries. It doesn't require any MRI scans, any lumbar punctures, any trained staff really. You saw what we did. I'm definitely not trained, and all we did was measure your walking speed. And it has potential. This is all very early stages, but it's a potential for a screening tool to add to the other screening tools there. So here we are. So this is a table with all the numbers, and this is for as I said, we broke it up into different gender, different sex, and different age categories. The second column is just the number of people, the actual number we had. So there's 5 people, say, in the 20 to 29 age group. The speed is in meters per second, so a bit like miles per hour or kilometers per hour. We measured today in meters per second. So the higher that number, the better, actually. And you can see that it actually increases today. So we've got some very fit and fast people as the ages go up, as the age categories go up. And then as we'd expect, when we go on further, there was nobody 80 plus, hence all the NAs at the bottom. So that's the second column there is talking about the meters per second. The standard deviation is a measure of spread of the data. And the reason that's important is because we define slow gait in MCR. If you're classed as a slow walker, if you're 1 standard deviation slower. So all this category is, there is this minus this one. So So that tells you if you're slow, and equally if you're plus that, you're considered fast. So that's compared to other participants here today, the numbers are very small, so don't worry where you were. And we didn't tell anyone where they were for that reason. So, but that's how you define slow and fast. And we go on to the next slide, you've got the males. This was all done in the last hour, hence the odd formatting, I apologise. As you can see the numbers here, slightly less males, but the speeds were roughly the same. And then if we jump on to the next one, you'll see them in a graph form. So the females are here, males are beside them, and you can see really, really similar actually, which is not usual. Often we see that across the board. Females are slower, and that's usually because of the height differential. So if you factor in height, it's usually the same. But what's interesting is there is a study that captured this. It's a meta-analysis, and there are 22,000 participants in the meta-analysis, and it's from lots of different countries. So already there's lots of heterogeneity in there, and these would have all different characteristics. But this is the results from the meta-analysis. So I tried to keep the Y scales roughly the same. This is, again, done in the last hour. But when we put the two together, so the next slide is the two, you'll see that we're faster than the vast majority if you look at a meta-analysis. So well done, everyone. I imagine we're a self-selecting, health-conscious crowd here, so maybe that helps explain some of that. And it was quite brisk outside. Maybe we were all wanting to walk fast. So that's roughly where we are today compared to the kind of global. That was a fairly global meta-analysis. So a little tiny bit on the future avenues of where we hope to go with MCR. These are bullet point by bullet points. We've done it. We've done the first one, although we might want to do it in a bigger population and across outside just one dementia conference. But we've identified a slow gait cutoff. So if we had enough people here, and if we did this enough times, we could then, with confidence, tell a 75-year-old female, yes, you are slower than, you're 1 standard deviation slower than the population in Scotland in general. And if you have a subjective cognitive complaint, you have MCR. It doesn't tell you anything in particular, only that you're in that high group category, that high risk category. Then we want to determine what the best cognitive question is. We then want to compare it to other things. It hasn't really been compared all that well, but there are, most of us know about mild cognitive impairment. I think they're quite complementary of each other. They probably shouldn't be replacing each other. And then there's other syndromes as well. And then we wanted to see if it was worthwhile. It's very quick to do. It's very easy. It doesn't cost anything. It's not resource intensive. It was just to see if would it be worthwhile adding to a memory clinic referral, say. And then it'd be interesting to pick apart these things where it's to do with Parkinson's disease or MS or conditions that can affect your walking speed, and where's you'd want to unpick a lot of the interactions there. Equally with depression or neuroticism, where there might be changes in reported subjective or self-reported cognitive issues. And then ultimately we'd want to find out if preventing or counteracting MCR and targeting people in that category, if that reduces the incidence of dementia going forward. We're pretty much winding up, so some take-home points. MCR, motor cognitive risk, is slow walking with a self-reported or subjective cognitive complaint in the absence of dementia. It's been found to be quite useful as a prognostic tool for really important health outcomes in older populations, such as dementia, falls, and increased mortality. You can see how easy it is to do. We did it today. And it could be a useful screen, although I think much more work is needed before we were to be rolling this out anywhere. That's us. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks so much for participating, everyone.